Well, hello everyone. I think we are now live. Let me just hit record on my audio in case this actually turns out to be anything worth recording. Thank you for joining me. Either way, I think I just set up a metronome. Hopefully not. I guess we'll find out when I check that audio recording. So yes, thank you everyone for joining me. I am going to be trying to do the first episode of the Forgeworks Grimoire, which is a series of trainings that I am building. So welcome to episode 1. This is the Forge table where we're actually going to build your persona engine. And let's see. Yeah, let's just get started. I'll add in the actual tarot read later because I don't have the multiple camera set up. It's probably possible, but I don't have it. So we'll talk through it. So today we are in the time of strategy, when tools are sharpened and vision takes form before the first spark of outreach. Next, we draw today's artifact of attention. This episode focuses on build. We shall use the Forge table to build our persona engine, our persona insights engine. And the third card, the practitioner, reveals our guide. Today we learn from the Mentallurgist, who forges clarity from the abstract. And finally, the one we serve. The student persona drawn from the deck today is Funnel Fiona, who appears everywhere but converts unpredictably. The forge stands silent in the late summer heat. Coals wait, tools gleam, and the anvil reflects the last rays of afternoon light. Your admissions team faces the quiet moment before the cycle erupts. Applications are months away, yet the pressure to plan is already heavy. You know the challenge well. Thousands of prospective students, each with different habits and hidden motivations. Lists and spreadsheets feel endless. But they rarely tell you who is ready to engage, who will fade, and how to act before that first email is even sent. Without a clear framework, recruitment travel and messaging risk becoming a guessing game. This twilight, the Mentallurgist steps from the shadow, ready to turn scattered data into a pattern you can read. At the Forge table, we will shape a persona insights engine using Slate's flags, counts, distance calculations, score bands, and address coalescing. With queries and strategies as our tools, you'll learn to create the tags and filters that anchor every interaction to come. By the time the coal burns bright, you will leave with a map of your student funnel and a set of living personas you can track and refine all year. This first spark sets the entire grimoire alight, and it invites you to follow the story through the next 11 chapters. So our persona. Fiona's everywhere. A workshop in July, a webinar in October. She downloaded your viewbook twice from different IPs. But no matter how much you see her, she slips past every conversion point like smoke through a grate. Her journey is wide, but will it ever lead to a submit? Some practitioner insight from our Mentallurgist. Personas are not masks for your students. They are mirrors for your strategy. Shape them with evidence, and they will reveal where to strike the next spark. Today we follow the cards through an exercise of persona generation. We will focus more on the Slate build, but leave me a comment if you want a session where we build the personas from the data. I'll just be building a few generic personas to demonstrate how students and ecospherical data can be used. These personas are given, they give admissions teams a shared language and ready-made segments they can act on right away. With flags and queries built in Slate, staff can tailor travel plans, target financial aid and merit outreach, trigger deliver campaigns, and adjust counselor follow-up based on each student's likely behavior and needs. Another interesting use of personas is with your Slate organizations. You can identify characteristics of the school, but you can also examine student behaviors to inform those personas. A school with large record volume but low conversion needs more attention given to the actual pool of students there. And a school with low record volume but high conversion can become a powerful feeder school or even a key to similar schools. When we talk about bringing these personas to life inside Slate, there are a few different paths you can take. First, you can start simply by adding filters and exports right inside a query or build your query library. This is the quickest way to experiment and to show your team that each persona might look like in real time. Second, you might actually just decide you want to put something more permanent than a single query. For example, you can create a population or build a custom field that updates through roles so that each record carries the persona flag automatically. A role alternative is to use an export and import process where you generate the persona flags in a query and then re-import them into Slate for long-term tracking. Today, we'll keep our focus on that first step, setting up these personas directly in a query. This gives you a working model that you can test and refine before committing to a population or field. And once you're confident in the logic and the thresholds, you can decide which of the more permanent methods best fit your institution's workflows. So we're going to spin up a query here. We're going to use our type of configurable joins. A lot of the Grimoire training will focus on configurable joins. And then we're going to use the records category, and we're going to go to person. And maybe a good primer for these trainings is actually just a simple introduction to configurable joins. I'll get that up and going at some point. So we'll build our query, and this query will return one row per person. I started with one of the clean Slate environments that Slate offers, which apparently has a lot of records. Makes me feel a little silly since I definitely created a spreadsheet of dummy data. But we're going to start with looking out of state Oliver. And the primary intent here is to identify those non-resident prospects who might be distance sensitive and need targeted travel and virtual touchpoints. And we'll do this to actually build export that captures this. So we're going to add a subquery export, and we'll just say this is out of state Oliver. And we'll flip this to an existence export. So if they meet the criteria that we're going to build, we're going to say a 1 or a 0. If this was a script, you could add whatever sentence or additional details you were having here in this value if exists, because that's what's going to return in your query if you meet the filters. So for each of our personas, we are going to do a straightforward piece of Slate data, and we're also going to add an ecospherical data point. So we'll start with that Slate data right now. And we just want to see, does the state of our address, and in fact, I'm in California myself, so we'll just use California. So we're just going to join address by type and rank. We'll go with rank 1, and we'll just go with a permanent address. And we'll go California. I think when I imported my dummy data, I don't think I actually assigned a permanent versus active, but we have some matching data, so that's great. And the ecospherical data is this concept of contextual data from the student's environment. And you may be getting this through Slate itself with the American Community Survey data. You could be getting this from a vendor like Segment Analysis from College Board, not getting landscape data anymore. Or you could even generate this internally with your Slate data. Maybe you're looking at what percent of your prospective students in a certain zip code or at a certain school have a certain characteristic. So for out-of-state Oliver, since we are looking at students who are outside of California, which is just what we're treating as our institution at the moment, we want to look at what is the percent of interest in going to an out-of-state college in their neighborhood. Like I said, I had actually created a dummy data set and uploaded this. I actually added a few fields that we'll be going over. So I'm going to add another filter, And I'm going to do a comparison filter. And we'll just say, we'll just go out of state, simple, greater than or equal to, maybe we want to just do 20%. So we'll do interest, out of state interest, and I just added that to our person data table. And we will make this a real. No value, we'll just say 0 if there is no value there. And we're just going to do greater than or equals to, and we'll add a literal. Don't just add your literal to the name, add it to the actual literal value. And we're just going to allow copies. And we're going to say that this value of the students in, we're just going to say maybe some kind of vendor data or data that you have internally in your system, the amount of students or adults or people in that geography have an out-of-state interest of going to college greater than 20%. So we're going to assign this both in California and out of state. I mean, outside of California. That would probably help. Not in California. And we'll just save that. So anyone with a 1 value in this column of data, we know are falling into our out-of-state Oliver persona. And next, we are going to actually look at a different persona we're going to call High Score Sally. And our Slate data that we're going to do here, we can just High Score Sally. And again, I'm just going to 1 or 0. And you could also maybe, if you just wanted to have one column and you wanted to rank order these personas so they were mutually exclusive, you could just coalesce a bunch of these subquery exports and get a single value, but then you have to kind of assign a rank to each of the personas, because if they meet multiple, which one do you want them, which preference persona would you have them in? So we're just going to do our existence here. And we're going to count the number of APs taken. And this could be something that you are maybe doing in the reader review process. And again, I'm not recommending any of these data points. I'm not endorsing any of these data points. This is just for an example. So we're going to actually look at the number of APs taken. And maybe this is from your reader review form. And maybe this reader review form occasionally had some non-numerical values in here. So we're also going to just look at a solution for that as well. So we're going to add a filter. And this is just going to be APs taken. And let's just do a formula. Actually, we can probably do a comparison here, and then we'll do, yeah, there we go. Sorry, I suppose I could have done this once before going on here, but so then we'll do a comparison. Well, we have a comparison there, so we're going to do a formula here. I guess we're going to do an aggregate, and then we'll aggregate a formula. So we're just going to I guess we're not. This would just be the replace. So we're going to do this with formula. So say in this APs taken field, you might have some non-numeric values in there. Maybe like a not verified or student reported, or maybe they didn't know if it was 3 or 4, so they put both those pieces of text in. So we're just going to replace all of those non-numeric data points and maybe we just want to say the text is self-reported. Now we're going to add some apostrophes around this, so it knows to look for a string value of self-reported. And then we're just going to replace that essentially with a null value. Let's go APs taken, cleaned. And you could stack these if you had multiple strings that you were looking to replace. Maybe you are replacing a /, maybe you're replacing some other piece of frequently seen text here. And we can just change this to a real data value, null value. Maybe we just drop into 0 there. So APs taken, maybe for a high academic performance persona, we just want to say that the value is 3. And maybe we have some other kind of criteria for schools that don't offer APs, or some other element to kind of balance the academics. So then maybe this is APs or GPA or some other element that allows the student to express and demonstrate their academic qualifications in this kind of persona. So perhaps the ecospherical data then here is, again, multiple criterias. And maybe we want to look at what are the percent of adults, again, in their geographic ecospherical area that just have a bachelor's degree or higher. So again, we're just going to do another comparison filter. We're just going to do percent adults at least bachelor's. And we will just continue to add that data point. So just search for bachelor's, percent of adults with at least a bachelor's. And we can just make that a real, just in case, and we'll drop a null value of 0. But perhaps we don't have data. Maybe perhaps this is data that's not necessarily on your data point. So what if, instead of just adding that straight data, we can embed this. As a coalesce. And coalesce is just going to say if there is no value here, we'll just add that to string. We're not going to add a null value because then coalesce isn't going to work. Maybe we know that the average percent of adults with at least a bachelor's is 15% in our communities, in our data, whatever it is. So we're going to coalesce. So if they don't have this particular data point on their record, then we're just going to go with this kind of manually constructed average. And again, you could even tie that a little bit more closely with actual data, with some conditionals, formula, whatever it could be. So percent bachelors with average fallback. And you could coalesce whatever kind of naming convention that you want to add, and we'll just do format value of real. Real just gives us the decimal points. Integers would be just whole values, which wouldn't work with a percentage unless you are adjusting the percentage up into a 0 to 100 instead of a 0 to 1 value. So we can just get rid of that raw value, raw data. And then maybe for this, we want to say it's 0.30 or 30% is our cutoff for this. So we'll say that greater than or equals to 0.30. So either one of those criteria would identify a prospective record as a high score Sally persona. And then let's take a look at another persona here. We're going to do a campus cruiser Carla. And this is someone that might be a local prospect who can respond to an in-person touch, maybe a short notice invitation for a specific program. And so we're going to go ahead and just say campus cruiser Carla. And Campus Cruiser Carla played a pretty prominent role in the Discount Inferno, which is the musical parody based pretty loosely off of Dante's Inferno. So Campus Cruiser Carla is showing up in the Innovation Forge cinematic universe, I guess. So for Campus Cruiser Carla, we're going to look at distance from campus. And I probably should have figured out a good longitude, latitude for this comparison. And if you've looked at or seen my session at the 2025 Slate Summit, or the workshop walkthroughs that I've done, or even just kind of the rehearsal video that I recorded for that, this is not a new element. I think I did a more basic version of it, so we're going to just do a coalesce here, and I won't take too much time doing school address and permanent address. We'll just look at the student's permanent address to our longitude latitude point. So we'll just do a formula here, and we'll give you the option to maybe do some bands here. Bands I have found to be helpful, especially for kind of segmenting. So we'll just leave that as a formula to give us a little bit more control to do our score bands. And maybe this is just distance. And what we're going to do, and I think we're still going to want to do I guess we can just do a null value. If we don't have a permanent address on file, then we can just have that null value be maybe a distance element, because we're probably more likely to have null value for address for purchased records or international records that we just didn't get address on. But anyways, that's kind of neither here nor there. So we'll do distance permanent address. And we could coalesce this. If they don't have a permanent address, then check their school address. If they don't have a school address, then check down into a null value. But we're just going to do proximity by latitude and longitude. We're just going to join by that type and rank again. We'll do permanent, rank 1. So if you have 2 addresses on file, rank 2 would be that second, whether it's priority, chronologically after the check down of which address you're pulling and comparing against. And maybe we just do I don't know. I don't know longitude latitudes off the top of my head, so we'll just do that. And this will check against their permanent address and how far away that is from our longitude latitude. In this, you could just search what is the longitude latitude of your institution or any other kind of important waypoint that you're doing. So this is just going to return us a value. We're going to make that real. And null value, maybe we just say is like a 3,000, kind of segment them in possibly with international students. Let me just do that distance perm. So maybe we want to see, did I add this as the actual, I did actually add that as the, instead of as a filter. Oh my goodness. And this is why I probably should have done this before I went live on YouTube. So we're going to say distance is less than or equal to maybe 50 miles. And we'll do a comparison. And we'll just do that longitude, latitude. And by type and rank, we're going to put that to permanent again, rank 1. And we'll assign this to some kind of random values. And we want that to be less than or equals to, and we'll just say 50 miles. So any student within 50 miles of your institution. And perhaps another element that we want to look at, because maybe this is, you have an event for a specific program let's say, a STEM program that you have coming up. So you just want to kind of see like, okay, they're close to campus. And we also want to see maybe they have a high concentration of high school graduates in STEM majors. So we're just going to do another comparison. And we're just going to look for our high percentage of students at a high school majoring in STEM. And we will make that real. Actually, let's do another coalesce. Let's add one more layer to this coalesce. So STEM majors. And we're going to coalesce this. So again, we're going to add our STEM field. And we can add our, maybe we've already looked at the data and we know that the average is 20% in the area. But maybe we have this data point on similar students, maybe students who are at the same zip code. We just never added this data to this particular student. So we can actually run an independent subquery on your entire prospective student pool. And this allows us to take those data points from other students who might have interesting ecospherical or contextual data on their record, but just that data, just for whatever reason, hasn't made it to students that you are interested in. So we're just going to say this is an independent subquery of STEM majors, and we could do it at the same school, let's say. So I'm going to do an independent subquery because this is STEM majors at a school. So our base is persons as well. And we want that STEM data point. And you do have, make sure that you're pulling from the correct data table. And we only want to pull this for students who are in that same geography. So in this, if this was a neighborhood data point, you could do this based off of zip code. So that you can do another comparison that the zip code matches the zip code. Or because this is more of a school-based element, or you could do both and get whatever data that you have available. Maybe, I mean, this particular data point wouldn't necessarily be very neighborhood specific, but depending on what the data point is. So we want to look at students who go to the same zip code. So just again, another comparison, we'll keep that as equals. And we'll go seed code. Well, probably would help if we did some joins to schools. And we'll do a school by rank. You can do by level of study, whatever you need to do. We'll just do by rank and school by rank for our independent. And this is our independent subquery. You don't want the data tables to be named the same as you pull up filters and exports. So it's just helpful to have change the names a little bit. So we're just going to look for, I guess it's probably going to be code. So code from our two school ones. Make sure that these match. So you're in this independent subquery that you're going to pull. You're only going to pull records that go to the same school. So we're just going to say this is a filter for same zip code, so our same school. And then we also don't want to, if again we have a mix of students who either have or don't have this data point, we want to make sure that we're only going to, and this is just going to pull that first record that's being returned. So we want someone who actually has this data. So we're just going to do exist, and we can just add our STEM, make sure we're doing that person independent subquery again. So we're only going to pull a record if they have this data point. If not, it's not helpful to offer up this data point on a different record if they don't have the data point. So you can just say the field exists. It's a little bit more vague, reusable. If we're copying this export and using different data points. So this is an independent subquery to pull that STEM major data from another student in our data file. And we'll just make that real. Oop. And you could pull that null value of the average there. I think it's a little bit cleaner to have the different data points that you're coalescing a little bit more clearly laid out. So we're going to return this STEM major percentage. If that is not available, then we'll pull that STEM major data point from a student who goes to the same school and actually has that data point. If that's not available, then we'll just use whatever is your data specific average. And we'll just make that real. And again, you could pull that null value there, but I think it's just cleaner to have that data visually accessible, especially since you're going to have to scroll to see that null value. So we're just going to say if that STEM major's data point is greater than, let's say it's 30%. So our average is going to fall below that, so we're only going to pull students who very much so meet our criteria that do greater than or equals to is very specific for this program that you're going to be sending an email out for. So we can just say STEM greater than or equals to 30%. And we'll just do an existence. So that will be our campus Cruiser Carla persona. And we're going to do one last persona, and then we'll start wrapping things up from there. And this next one we talked about earlier, this is Funnel Fiona. We want to spot those high unconverting activity students, prospective students, so you can simplify next steps for them. This kind of helps reduce friction on your call to actions with a really program-specific CTA. So we want to look at, again, another independent subquery. We're just going to call this Funnel Fiona. And I'll remember to do this correctly this time. And we're just going to add some filters here. So we want someone with a high engagement score. So we're just going to say high engagement score. And we'll just do engagement. We'll do engagement score. And we'll do comparison. Maybe we just want to say it's 50. And this cutoff could be changing as you go throughout your cycle. Early in the cycle, students aren't as engaging as much. So this score could be changing throughout your cycle. So make sure that you're not just choosing an arbitrary number. And we'll say that's greater than or equal to. So we have our high engagement score. And let's say that they are, my dummy data did come through because that is a new field that I created for this specifically. But maybe we want to say they're not an applicant yet. They're really interested in us, but we haven't crossed the hurdle yet. And we're going to say they're an inquiry. If you have a data set that maybe they applied previous year, status isn't the best way. Maybe you want to do an existence for not exist, application, active period, whatever it could be. We're just doing inquiry for simplicity's sake. And then, again, maybe we just really want to focus on students who might be interested in our finance program. And we don't really have interest data on this particular student, so we're going to bounce to our ecospherical data. So we're going to do another independent subquery filter, and we'll do a comparison again for, I should have a finance, percent of adults in finance industry. Again, this is a little bit of ecospherical data to maybe the students growing up with those expectations. Try to, of course, have student-specific data whenever you can. You're not endorsing these kinds of data for outreach or anything generally, but then we're just going to say maybe, let's do 5%. And again, I would recommend pulling that independent subquery to compare against similar students who might not have the data on their record, but might have on similar students and with the same zip code, or creating an average backfall there. We've already demonstrated both of those though, so I don't think we need to do that again. Our null value of just 0%. And we're just going to say percent and finance. So now we're not going to just send them 10 emails a week. We're going to be much more targeted with program-specific emails for this particular student, because their activity is high, but conversion is stalling for some reason. And this could also be a good prospect for getting called or understanding some other contextual information as to why they might be stalling out, but helps the counselor give them a nudge. But really what we're seeing here, and I think AI will definitely have a large role to play in communicating these students, building these personas. But if we simply just put this in a black box of AI and don't understand our students, don't understand, we can get much more granular than with just 4 of these, but starting to better understand the aspects of students that can help you communicate with them in a deeply personal, tailored way. I talk about this a lot with adaptive enrollment management, is being able to better understand your students. And I think this is a good exercise for you to start understanding what data is available in your Slate instance, whether that's already attached to your student, that's ecospherical data that is contextual, that the student might be influenced by, but also just a pitch. Have a short inquiry form, but also have that follow-up longer, a 2-page inquiry form, probably do a redirect, maybe not use new features quite yet based off of where those are at recording, to better understand why is the student going to college? Why are they interested in your institution? What is motivating them at this particular part of the cycle? And that will pay dividends in being able to connect with students in a more meaningful way. But there will also be broad swaths of your prospective student population that you don't have that data for. So this ecospherical data might, again, help you be able to target your communications a little bit more. If you're sending 10 emails a week to a student, they're not checking those 10 emails. So better understanding, okay, these are the 3 emails that we can send this month that are more likely to resonate with this persona population. And you're not flooding them with endless emails anymore. You are engaging with them in a more strategic and data-minded way that allows you to facilitate a conversation and a series of interactions that is meaningful and impactful and is more likely to move the student forward through the cycle, both at your institution and just generally in college. Because again, so many institutions are just sending those 10 emails a week, and spray and pray, we're just moving records through the funnel. And the folks who convert, the ones that don't. But I think we're very quickly seeing and realizing that that is not necessarily a strategy that is solvent and a long-term strategy that is sustainable. So as we start understanding the data in these very powerful systems like Slate and other CRMs that we have, that we can really fine-tune and understand our students in a way that allows us to build those meaningful relationships and understand them in a way that 10 emails a week is just not going to do. And as we transition to our takeaways and our runes of practice here for today, I think what we really want to do is start with these clear persona definitions. Think beyond biodemographics to include behavior, timing. Timing is such an important factor. What part of the cycle are you in? What part of the cycle are they in mentally? And what are those moments that matter around their actions? Are they applying after they do a campus visit? Did we hit a recent national milestone deadline, and now maybe they got a decision letter for ED, and now like, oh, okay, I didn't get into the dream school. Now I got to put some more applications in because I have to find a place to go to college. So understanding where the student is coming from, when they're acting from, and when they're even taking behaviors inside your own instance of Slate is valuable information that does require a lift. It does require thought and strategy around, but can be, again, one of those pieces that is worth it's the juice worth the squeeze. As I feel like I keep hearing that in a lot of higher education podcasts. So I'm going to say it too. I'm going to be one of the cool kids. And this ecospherical data that we are able to, again, to pull into understanding the context in which our students are growing up in, and the families and environments and social structures that they might be seeing. So being able to pull that in when you don't have that first person active data, whether they've told you why they're interested or what is motivating them, and financial aid signals and all of those different elements, that you have access to so much data that you can be acting in, and that can really help fuel understanding your students through these persona exercises. Even if you're not building this out to deliver campaigns or call lists or contact lists, just understand who is actually in your prospect pool, and understanding how you communicate with your prospect pool is going to shape how they see your institution. Every institution is going to say that you have great faculty and that there is a great academic and great culture on campus. So understanding who your students actually are and aren't, and communicating in a way that will resonate with them. So I think this is an excellent exercise, even if you have an AI vendor who is going to be making phone calls and can kind of start piecing together this in the background. Your people need to know. The people who are actually having the conversations with these students, who are writing the emails that aren't AI generated, or even if you're using AI to help accelerate how you are writing to these students. I think it's incredibly important to know who you're writing to be able to write to them. So that incredibly important element there. And then also using existence and formula filters to create the parameters for these persistent, easily referenced indicators that can evolve with your funnel is incredibly important. And again, allows you to scale in a way that you might not be able to otherwise. And then applying things like distance calculations. I don't think I did a distance calculation. Oh yeah, we did. It was a very simple one though. And score bands. Maybe we want to become a Funnel Fiona. It's 3 points for having high engagement score, or maybe it scales for a low engagement score is a point, medium score is 2 points. And you need to hit some kind of threshold or criteria of, okay, at 7 points, you become a Funnel Fiona. So being able to use score bands, didn't really have time to get to that today, but I have other videos, the workshop walkthroughs for my Slate Summit session. Those were 2 1-hour videos where I showed feature engineering in Slate. So I used a lot of score bands and like open rates and stuff like that. And I think I even did it in the distance calculations. So definitely go watch that to get more information on score bands. But being able to segment students by a geographic reach and strength of engagement signals can also be incredibly helpful. That adds a level of nuance to this that, again, might not be apparent at first in this kind of exercise that we're just showing today. This is a very, very quick, brief overview of just understanding student personas. And then coalescing addresses, and just making sure that just having clean data early. And it really allows you to have a stable foundation, which prevents those downstream confusions in travel planning and communications. But being able to build queries and rules, or if you're doing an export-import process, that serves as kind of that master filter for all future score models, deliver campaigns, counselor dashboards. It's just such an important building block that you can incrementally build upon, that allows you to iterate, but also, again, scale and expand your work beyond just understanding your students to actually being able to take those actions on them, whether that's call lists, email campaigns, dynamic segmentation. There's so much that we can do once we start doing the work to understand our students better. And as we cycle then through to our discussion sparks. So which prospective student behaviors are the strongest factors in how you will engage with your prospective students? Is it coming to campus? Is it emailing again, if you have Slate Inbox active and you're using that, is it those kinds of engagement metrics where the students are reaching out to you? Is it open click rates, which with automatic opens and clicks from vendors is becoming a harder and harder data element to kind of wrangle into a meaningful way. Again, did some work with that in those workshop walkthroughs previously. But how is the student able to engage with your institution in a trackable way that allows you to understand the student and also create those follow-up communications? This is just an element for you to discuss internally as a team so that you can be more actionable and mindful with the data that you have on your students. And next, how might your current travel strategy shift if we segment by engagement score or persona rather than just geography alone? And a lot of this can come into play at that organization or zip code level. So whether that's creating a thing like quorum scoring, where you are aggregating record volume, conversion metrics, engagement score or yield scores by the students at these schools or organizations, being able to engage at those overperforming or hyperperforming organizations, or even at the zip code level, of creating these kinds of segmenting scores or personas at the zip code or geo-market level. When you start looking at where your institutional success is, and again, being mindful, asterisk, being mindful of recruitment strategy and any kind of legal parameters or ethical parameters around recruitment travel and where you're planning on your travel at and all that. Again, not legal advice, but understanding where, again, using, again, those words that we might not like as a higher education industry, the return on investment, or being able to have that broadest impact on the students at these locations that we can do this recruitment travel at. And it's not just, oh yeah, we've always traveled to this geo market and done these 5 high school visits because someone 7 years ago had family members in that state. So they did recruitment travel there so they could spend a day with family. It's so easy to fall into the cycle of, oh, this is how we did it last year, and this is how we did it the year before, and that we just continue doing it. But if we take a step back, look at the data that we have access to, build the tools and the resources that can harness the data in a productive, impactful way, how is that going to change how you do your recruitment travel? If you do recruitment travel, of course. How does that affect events, whether that's in person, virtual? How does that affect how you advertise? Again, the kind of cognitive space you have with your prospective students is limited. So you might have in one of those 10 emails every week that you send an events-centric call to action, but there's going to be certain segments of your population that's not going to come to campus this week. So being more mindful and strategic with connecting with students where they are and where they are not, and being able to understand the students and use the best making the most out of that cognitive real estate that you have for the students, not abusing their goodwill to open and read your emails or skim them, quite frankly, and making that accessible in a way that, I mean, it could even be engagement levels. Maybe a student that is high yield likelihood and the high engagement levels might take an extra second and a half on your emails. So being able to interact with them in a more meaningful and impactful way, because you've already built that bridge. You've already established the trust that you might not have with your, as I see on the screen, in their clean slate, 105,000 prospective students. Not all 105,000 are going to give as much cognitive real estate to you for your emails, for your calls. So understanding who you can reach out to better. Who of these 505,000 are more likely to be receptive to a cold phone call or an extra email a week? You're not going to know that until you start looking at your data historically and seeing how these students make, hey, out-of-state Oliver never clicked on a event call to action because they're out of state and it's expensive and inflation is high. But they loved student success and career outcomes. So again, don't send them 10 emails a week. Send them the 2 important emails. And as you continue to build that relationship and that trust, you can expand. Okay, we can add a third email because they are always opening. They are always engaging with them. We are always providing impact and resources to a student in each of our emails. So we've already established that we can add another email to Out-of-State Oliver. That again fits, or again, a segment of Out-of-State Oliver that has interest in finance. So whereas we're starting to see other ways we can segment even internally inside the persona. So yeah, just being able to have this understanding of your students, of your geographies, of your organizations, of your zip codes allows you to codify it in scale and automate what you're doing. Or just inform that more high cost, high value, high touch initiatives or outreach that you're doing. Again, you can't call 105,000 students, but you know there's a subset of Campus Cruiser Carla. They'll pick up the phone when they see your phone number, and they'll have a half an hour conversation with you. So being able to, and then just knowing that this is this persona has a series of attributes that can help you with that conversation that you're going to have on the phone. And then I think another great discussion spark here is, what are the gaps in your data collection that limit the personas that you can build today? Do you have American Community Survey data turned on in Slate so that you can pull it? I didn't. It's a weird data to pull. I didn't actually go into it because I just added fields. But you have to do a join for every, what is it, like world? I don't even have it turned on here. So it's weird. I think that there's a really good video that shows you how to walk through and add the ACS data. Or maybe it's, hey, we need to spring for a little bit more with a vendor to get this contextual ecospherical data. Or maybe it's a thing where we start building an internal library of our 105,000 prospective students. What makes students at a school or a geography or a zip code, what makes them special? What makes them distinct in ways that we can communicate with and connect with? And I think that is such an important element because there are ways to do it. There is, Slate gives it access to you. Vendors give you access to it, but you can also build this in-house. If you have, again, data, Slate is not a data warehouse. Retention records, of course, retention policies are a thing, but you have data in your instance of Slate that you can internally build a library of nuanced, interesting data that can help guide these interactions and help guide your understanding of your students. It's here. It takes lift. It takes a mindset and a creativity to understand what you can do, what you can't do, and what you can tinker with and get to eventually. But you have access to the data. Maybe you need some budget to hire someone to help you with this. Maybe you need to focus less on things that are not impactful in building relationships, or again, that return on investment for the institution, but also for the student. You might be doing things that aren't helping the student and aren't helping your mission as an institution, but you could be spending a lot of time. Maybe it's, okay, we need to automate some of these other elements with the power of Slate, and then we'll use that time that we freed up to do exercises like this, where it's persona generation through students, through organizations, through zip codes, through geomarkets. And again, as you become clearer with who you're engaging with, you can be more focused. And this was an element of my book, the GPS, the guided... I should know these off the top of my head. The guided prioritization strategy. I got it. I looked at the book. It's on my desk. Like, I could flip to it real quick, but I got it. I pulled it. The guided prioritization strategy of, there are so many high cost, high touch, high cost touch, high impact things that you can be doing, but you can't do it for 105,000 prospective students. But you can do it for the students that it's actually going to move the needle for. And you don't know who it's going to move the needle for until you start understanding the data in your system. So those are our 3 discussion sparks. So what are the important data points? how are those data points going to move your strategy and your practices, but also what can you be collecting, whether that's an inquiry form that in a long inquiry form, don't your first touch inquiry form, 5, 6, 7 questions, don't make it long. Redirect it to a longer inquiry form, have it as a randomized dynamic call to action on your emails so students can tell you more about their interests and their motivations. Don't make that inquiry form hard for people to fill out. Get the name in your system. What do they call it when you have like a drip campaign to collect additional pieces of information one at a time? There was a great podcast I listened to that last year, I think. Again, the dangers of me just going off the top of my head, I'm getting off script. But anyways, so what is the data that you could be using? Whether you can spin it up internally, you can start collecting it, you can reach out to a vendor to add it. What is the data limitations and opportunities at your institution that can help with this process of understanding your students, understanding your geographies, understanding your schools, and bridge that gap? What's the highest priority and start from there? What's the biggest impact for the amount of money, time, and resources that you're going to spend to get it? You might have this could move the needle 5%, but it's going to take $100,000. Well, okay, move the needle 1% for $1,000. And snowball, build, iterate, get momentum, and demonstrate at your institution that when we focus on these things, when we spend the time, the resources, the money, we make an impact, we serve the institution, we serve the student better, and more opportunities for funding will come, more recognition for the work that you're doing, the systems that you provide, and the processes that you are able to enable will continue to grow. So what are those gaps? What can you pilot? What can you say, hey, we're going to try this. If it works well, we'll add additional resources to this. What are those opportunities at your institution right now? And a Forge trial. I'm going to end every one of these Grimoire episodes with a bit of homework, a laboratory, a mini lab, whatever you want to call it. But what are 3 persona-driven segmentations, filters that you can forge in your own Slate environment and test them against last year's inquiry poll? What were the outcomes? What were the actions your institution took that had a better or larger impact on these personas? Record what patterns you discover and let me know in the comments how you plan on using these personas at your institution. Is it personalized drip campaigns? Is it segmentation? Is it different calls to actions that are dynamic based off of the persona? I'd love to build a community around this kind of work. So let me know in the comments what you're doing, what you're thinking about, how you're taking what we're doing today or what you're doing today and building momentum. So for a little foreshadowing of the next training, we're going to follow the Threadweaver and read the hidden stories in your student data. We followed the Mentallurgist today, starting to examine and build our persona insights engine. But I have 12 of these planned, and it was hard to get it narrowed down into a 12 sequence training series. But I'm very open to changing these as we go. What are you finding impactful? Is it this more Slate piece that you just need to know how to do this in Slate and we can talk about strategy later? Or should we pull this into, pulled this data and just pulled the raw data and started building out our personas and identifying the trends in our data that allows us to see, okay, maybe you don't have out-of-state Oliver. Maybe you're a small residential college or commuter college. So understanding how out-of-state students are engaging with your institution is not helpful. So maybe you have data at your institution that is more synergistic with High Score Sally or Funnel Fiona. So let me know. Let's craft this series together of what's going to be helpful and impactful for your institution. Because I thank you so much for spending, I think we're at about an hour now. Thank you so much for spending your time. We are all very stressed and strapped for time. So the fact that you're able to give me an hour of your time and you trust me with an hour of your time for this training and future trainings means the world to me. And I want to make sure I'm not just talking into the void in a way that's not helpful. So if you liked this format, or if you want me to tweak the format a little bit, or a lot of it, or we can just talk more about what is the strategy, and we'll talk more about a strategy of communicating to personas in the future. But yeah, I'd love to get your comment and your feedback, and we'll shape this together. That's what the Forge is for. So until next time, thank you for joining me. I probably should have come up with a sign off, but I didn't. That's one element of the script that I did not work on. But remember to strike true. Thanks, everyone.